Okay, it looks like we have some people signing in tonight. I'm so happy. Thank you, Vicki, for doing this again with us tonight. We really, really appreciate it. You look spectacular as usual. Um, and so, again, I'm Fairgreen. I am president of the IHA. I am in for Isabel this evening. She is the usual IHA presenter. She's not feeling well this evening, so I get to try to fill her actually very tiny shoes, metaphorically large, but actual very tiny shoes. So what I'd like to do is just a little reminder for those of you who weren't there. And by the way, if you are signing in, go ahead and just take your video off so that we make sure we get enough streaming, and that way it's going to highlight my video and Vicki's video. And then if you have a question or a comment later, you can go ahead and turn it on so everyone can see it. If you have a comment during the video, please go ahead and type in the chat. If you don't know where that is in your Zoom app, it's going to appear at the very bottom below the video feed. And I will make sure that Vicki gets to all of those questions tonight. And just as a reminder, the IHA is trying to do a IHA live feed like this once every 2 months in partnership with the Bay Area Savvy Players, and they are actually doing every 2 months. So we're alternating that in conjunction to bring you all kinds of great information about relationship-based horsemanship. So without further ado, oh, and one more thing, don't forget we are coming into the end of the raffle. So the IHA has a raffle going on right now. The raffle is actually for a beautiful painting of any one of your animals. It could be a horse, it could be a dog or a cat, but we are raffling those tickets off for 1 for $25, 2 for $40, or 6 for $100. And the painting has a much greater value than that, and all of the proceeds for that go into our grant writing program. So please check that out on our website, internationalhorsemanship.org. And so again tonight, we are so lucky to have Dr. Vicki Johanneck here. Thank you for showing up, Vicki.
Of course.
And we so appreciate
you, Farrah.
I am very convincing at times, I understand. So for those of you who do not know Vicki, I would like to give you a little introduction for that. And as I do that, Vicki has some pretty cool exercises for you to do tonight, and it would be handy if you did have a pencil and paper ready for those little exercises. So as I introduce Vicki, make sure that you have your pencil and paper handy, okay? Perfect. And oh yes, absolutely. I'm seeing Andrew. I'm seeing your comments. Thank you for chatting with that, Andrew, to make sure they work. All right. So Dr. Vicki Johanneck is a board certified coach and an emotional health and well-being specialist with a doctorate in clinical psychology and a Master of Divinity degree. Her goal as a coach is to inspire and empower her clients with a more joyful living through the enhancement of dynamic relationships. Vicki is a lifetime member of the IHA and also runs the stables at Greenfield Farm in Maple Lake, Minnesota, which is a fabulous place, by the way. Tonight, she will be discussing emotional intelligence with us as it relates to our relationships. So not only our horse relationships, but our human relationships too. So Dr. Vicki, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, do I need to do anything, or I'm just showing up on the screen, or you'll have to, if I have to do anything more, just let me know.
I will completely let you know, and it's working fabulously right now. So
okay, great.
I know.
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is start out with a little exercise. And some of the people that tried to watch before will be a pro at this now. So the first thing I'm going to do is show a picture. And I'm going to ask people to look at this and key in. What do they key in the chat box?
Yes, they can key in the chat. If you need to see that, it shows up at the bottom of the video, just push the chat and it's going to appear on the side there.
Okay. So I'd like people to key into the chat box what they see on this picture.
All right, and as we're doing this, go ahead and okay, so we're seeing some people pop up here. Somebody says, Abby says, a young woman. Michelle says, a young lady with a hat on. Andrew says, an old woman and a young woman. He's got like binocular vision going on
Right.
there.
Yeah.
You could almost see a snail from this, like a shell and a snail. The more I look at that, the more things I see. It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So
do you have any other comments? An old woman and a young woman and a porcupine. Yes, exactly. I see the porcupine too.
right. Uh, well, anyway, what it is on this picture, I'm sure people there's a lot of different variations of this picture out there. Um, there is a young woman and an old woman, depending upon how you look at it. Let's see here. The old woman, this is her nose right there. And so that's the nose of the old woman. And then that is the chin of the young woman. And then this line across here, that's the mouth of the old woman or the necklace of the young woman. So it's very interesting. It's two different options. So, but I wanted to start out this evening with this fun picture because our topic for tonight is emotional intelligence. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what emotional intelligence is and what it can mean to us in our relationships with ourselves, with others, at work, and also with our horses. One of the interesting aspects of emotional intelligence is that we're actually going to be talking a little bit about neuroscience, which means we'll spend a little bit of time talking about our brain. Then we'll do an exercise to get a taste of how we can work with one of our feelings to begin to stretch and grow our emotional intelligence. So if I go back to that opening exercise, some people saw the young woman, some people saw the old woman, some people could see both. So when I first saw this picture, all I could see was the old woman. Some of these two-way pictures can be super challenging. So I had to have someone point out to me almost every time the young woman. I looked at it at first glance, I only saw the old woman. So and I could actually feel my brain do that little shift when when it switched from seeing the old woman. It's like something moved. Then I could see the young woman.
You could actually feel your hamsters kind of spinning the wheel the other way.
Yeah, they go other direction. No way. So my brain felt just challenged to look at something differently. So if any of you felt that same shift looking at the pictures, you'll get an idea of how we can start to begin to train our brain to do things differently. Emotional intelligence is something that can be learned and improved. It takes awareness, openness, practice, and a willingness to work at it and do things differently.
I'm so excited. Ever since I first met you, Vicki, and you started talking about emotional intelligence, I was prodding you immediately with different conversations. I know I did give you a moment's rest because there's very few people who actually talk about this topic and even value it. I mean, we don't commonly hear about it in society. Like, well, how is your emotional awareness? It sounds kind of like a food topic. So
Right.
I'm so excited to have you start to explain those detail to us. But if you wouldn't mind, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your story and why you became interested in emotional intelligence and neuroscience? And also, how does it relate to those of us who are working on horsemanship? Because it might be kind of hard to see sometimes.
Exactly. Okay. Well, as you mentioned earlier, I have a doctorate degree in clinical psychology. I also have a master divinity degree. And along the way, as I was obtaining those degrees, I had the opportunity to work in several challenging and interesting places. For my psychology degree, I completed a pre-doctoral internship in a maximum security prison, working for a year with incarcerated men who mostly had a history of aggravated violent assault and murder.
I just want to take a moment. I hope everyone could just like hear a pin drop, mic drop. Okay. This little lady, you aren't huge, you're a tiny person. This little lady sat in a room with how many prisoners with anger issues? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Thanks. I just want to make sure everyone caught that.
Yeah. One of the things I did there, it took 5 months to put together, but we put together an anger management program. And so there were probably 19 guys in the room, and and a couple of female, therapists. And it was great because they all wanted to work on their anger, and they were all pretty motivated if they were in that group. So from there, uh, my postdoctoral internship was done at a community mental health center where I worked with court ordered domestic violence perpetrators, as well as different groups and individuals dealing with various issues. And then I also worked in the chemical dependency and chronic pain management areas of mental health at the VA. I also worked with adolescents in several inpatient treatment settings. And then for my ministry degree, I was ministry intern for a large metro congregation with 3,000 members. So a vast array of experiences.
So you don't sit around, is what you're saying.
No, complicated situations. So, but anyway, after I completed both my degrees, I spent a lot of time reflecting on my experiences, on those experiences, and just from the description, you can imagine they were pretty impactful. So the one thing that kept coming back to me as I thought about all these experiences and some of the different things that I had thought about, one thing kept coming back, and that was my underlying belief that life is about relationships and emotions contained within those relationships. I think if we can work on our emotions, we'll have good relationships at home, at work, with strangers, with the environment, with our animals, and so on. So many times over, I saw that if people were having difficulty in their lives, it was because they were having a hard time with emotions, either theirs or others, or those emotions were getting in the way of their life or their relationships. Oftentimes it would make them to make bad choices, or they might lean too much on other people to make choices for them. And I know for me personally, the worst decisions I've made in my life were because my emotions, my choices, instead of the other way around. So I decided I had to learn to do things differently, and there were things that I wanted to change. But of course, life isn't that easy. It's not as simple as fix our emotions and our life will be perfect. I wish it was, but that's where all the hard work and the motivation and the desire to make some changes, that's where that's all involved. Then, interestingly enough, one of my favorite classes in school turned out to be brain anatomy. I didn't even really know it until later, after I started working with people for a while, and I didn't realize how fascinated I was with how the brain works, which ties into how people work and how they think and how they act. It just is really fascinating to me. And then
Well,
another,
it's,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
a relief for me to hear about you validating emotions. Like emotions really aren't a bad thing. They really tell us something about, what's going on inside that person. They just might not know how to express it. So it might come out in an emotion. And I think, what you're trying to help us do is really interpret those emotions into, kind of more the deeper meaning. Like, why is this person feeling sad, or why are they feeling frustrated? And we can look at it the same way with our horses. Why is this horse snorting and jumping in the air? He's trying to tell us something. He's going through some emotion.
Right.
And I think it's so exciting too, to when you do feel those emotions of a creature or another person, that you start to realize, I'm feeling that emotion too, but it's not actually mine. It's actually coming from that other person, but they're sharing it with me. Okay. I don't have to feel angry or sad. I can recognize that creature, that person is feeling angry or sad. What can I do to help them with that? So it is really a science. So thank you for enlightening us on this topic.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and it runs the whole gamut. I mean, there's so many emotions, everything from, the deepest sorrow to the happiest joy. And sometimes, I personally went through some therapy. And as I went through it, it took me a long time to learn the difference between shame and guilt.
Hmm.
That's a therapy thing. I don't do that anymore. But I mean, that was part of my personal experience, and sometimes feeling our feelings and being able to identify them and name them can be quite challenging, because I know what I feel, but I can't put a name on it.
Right.
So that's why it's important to start doing this, everybody, and so, back to one more thing that led me on this journey, of course, was our own personal journey with our horses. In
Mm.
2012, Mark and I built a barn, and we were a professional American saddlebred training and show facility here in Minnesota. We had a professional trainer, and we were doing great. We did between 75 and 100 lessons a month. We were training horses in the barn. We were doing well at shows. But the only thing I was missing was that I was spending all my time in the office instead of with the horses.
Mm.
And, relationships are real important to me. And I wanted my connection with my horses. And so after we did some reevaluation about where we were and how we were operating and what we wanted to do, about 2 years ago, we went private. So we no longer gave lessons, no longer had a trainer, no longer had training horses in the barn. And at that point, that made us 100% responsible for everything for our own horses. Now, I didn't grow up with horses. My husband didn't grow up with horses. So all of a sudden, we have 10 horses in the barn, and they're all these show horses. And that meant our saddlebred, our training learning curve was huge. It was like
Mhm.
this, you know. So I struggled to realize at that point that in order to have the relationship that I wanted with my horses, I had to learn how to be a leader. I had to learn how to control my energy. I had to get stronger physically. I had to learn how to connect and actually be in relationship with my horse. And then overall, I just had to become the best me I could, for my horses. So obviously I'm still working on that aspect. And
Oh, Vicki, you're just perfect.
oh, right, not quite.
No,
Yeah,
I think it's a gallant mission, right? That we continue to for ourselves, for our horses, for our other relationships. We continue to try to be better people always. So, thank you
right.
for trying to help us with that tonight, Vicki.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I think that if I'm not learning, then I'm not growing.
Mhm.
So obviously, then earlier this year, I met you, Miss Peregrine, and I started this fun new little path, on my journey with the horses, my learning and IHA. And I am so happy to be a lifetime member of the IHA and super pleased to be here tonight. And so I have a lot of information to share. So I think we'll have a lot to cover.
Well, I'm excited to hear it, Vicki. Thank you so much. And we appreciate knowing really who you are and why this is so important and how you can relate to all of these crazy horse people that showed up here tonight. So Thank you. I mean,
Yeah,
crazy in the best way, okay,
in
everyone?
the
Crazy
very
in the
best
best way.
way. Exactly. So, okay, so back emotional intelligence. It's commonly referred to as EI, EQ, a couple of different, what, what are these? Like
Abbreviations.
abbreviations, yes. So, anyway, here's a brief definition of it. It's our ability to recognize our emotions and the emotions of others. It's two, to be able to understand what we're feeling and to be able to label those emotions correctly. And then three, to be able to use that emotional information we have to guide our thoughts and behaviors in different environments, in different settings, and or to help us achieve our goals. So for just two little words, it's a very, very complicated subject. So
Well,
it
I really appreciate the definition too, coming from you recognize my emotions, recognize somebody else's, and then now how can we steer it? How can we use it to our benefit? So it's
Right,
great.
and it's not that much different than what we do with our horses either. It's like, well, what are they trying to say? What do we think they're doing? Are they angry? Are they not? I mean, are they just being joyful and happy? And that's why they're bucking and kicking and rearing. You
Right. Are they telling a horse joke?
Exactly. You know? So anyway, in 1998. Daniel Goleman first introduced emotional intelligence out there. He suggested that there were five main categories that comprised emotional intelligence because emotional intelligence is one of those topics that researchers like to develop into models. And there's not just one definition, and there's not just one model. People come out with different theories for what they think it is and how to describe it. But Dana Goleman identified these five main categories. And the first one is self awareness. And that's one of the big ones, and one of the key pieces to emotional intelligence. How well do we know ourselves? How well do we understand our emotions and understand ourselves? And then two, self-regulation. How well do we manage and control ourselves and our emotions and our resources and our abilities? And then three, social skills. Once we understand ourselves and are able to manage ourselves, then you can start to work with others.
Mhm.
Four, empathy, understanding another's perspective, to be able to feel when someone else is feeling, and the ability to sense what they need from you. And then five, motivation, our drive to improve and achieve, to commit to goals, to be optimistic, to increase our resilience. It also includes personal time management in that
Mm.
area.
And that is extremely valuable to just know how to get everything done in a realistic amount of time. I'm not an expert at that yet, so any tips you have would be great.
I don't know if anybody ever becomes an expert in that, you know. But the great thing, and the one thing all these theories and models all on, is that emotional intelligence can be learned and it can be improved. So what's interesting is at the same time we're learning to work on our emotions, that means we're actually physically changing and rewiring our brains. So I want to move on to an example of how we can learn to train our brains a little bit. So we're going to do a short little exercise here with one of our feelings, and that one's anger. Everybody has some identification, with the feeling of anger one way or another. So I'm not alone there. So in the past, as I mentioned, I had let my feelings get a hold of me sometimes, and one of those is anger, and so I wanted to learn how to control that. And so it's a good thing to be able to, respond to our emotions instead of reacting to,
Mhm.
you know.
Well, and actually, isn't it important to, to feel it and then even in yourself, read what is it, why am I really angry? What is it really coming from, right? And that's what you're going to help us understand how to do.
Right, exactly. And the difference between coaching and therapy is that coaching can help you identify it and move you forward to progress your goals. And
Mm.
then therapy, people can go back and they can go, well, where did all my anger and did those things come from and create and things like that. So the difference here is that coaching, we're looking at things and moving forward. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So we're going to talk a little neural anatomy now. So
Put
in
your thinking caps on.
yes, our actual thinking caps. So inside our brain, there's three parts we're going to mention. And so the first is our brainstem, which is right back here on the back of our neck there. And so that controls, the brainstem controls the flow of messages between the body and the brain, as well as basic functions like breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, etc. We're just going with abbreviated definitions here. And then we're going to talk about the amygdala, which is a small almond shaped organ inside our brain. We actually have two of them. They're part of our limbic system, and that they help detect fear and threats to our safety. And they're part of the system that initiates the flight, fight, or freeze. And then we're going to talk about our prefrontal cortex, which is right up here. And that's the executive center of our brains. It's just coordinating, planning, making decisions. It basically pulls everything in our head and body together, kind of like a party planner, like a party coordinator. Yeah. So an easy way to kind of think about it is that Dr. Daniel Siegel invented this thing that's called a hand model of the brain. And so if you put your hand like this, you can see that we're going to call this part right here is our brain stem. So it comes up here, which is the back of our head right there. And so our thumb is the limbic, is the amygdala. I really should have two because they're two like this. And so they're deep inside our brain. And so if we look at this here, this is the prefrontal cortex. So what basically happens is that all our information comes in through the brainstem, and then it comes into our brain, and then our prefrontal cortex is what assimilates and coordinates and gets everything put together. But what happens when our emotions take over is we get all this input come in to our limbic system and our amygdala. And at that point, Daniel Siegel calls it, we flip our lid. And so it's like when people kind of lose it, so if you flip your lid, he looks at it this way and say, well, at this point, all that information coming in and our prefrontal cortex can no longer coordinate with everything in the brain like it can when it's right here.
So it's like an overload of the amygdala when
Right.
that happens, when it flips your lid. So does the information that we get from the environment, it comes up the brainstem and then it goes into the amygdala, and then it kind of decides if it's going to go to the front of the brain or if it makes it through the amygdala? Is that how that works? Or
Well, it's just information coming in. And sometimes it feels like, if we're overwhelmed,
ah,
the feelings take over.
got it.
Like when the feelings take over, like that's the part, like when you hear people sometimes that are in car accidents and
Mm,
you hear of them lifting up cars or crazy things like that, or from some of the people that I worked with in the past, they get into a situation, they make a bad decision, lose their temper, maybe shoot somebody, or get angry. I mean, we've all seen people get angry and do crazy things.
mhm.
or get really sad. Or it can happen if you get really super happy.
Right.
I'm not just talking anger. You can flip your lid on happiness,
Just like
on
emotional
feeling.
overload.
Right.
Mhm.
And then when that happens, then your emotions take over and your brain, your prefrontal cortex isn't engaging and coordinating your brain anymore.
Got it.
There's a reason your mom said think 10, 10, count to 10 before you do anything. So it's kind of like that old saying where if you count to 10, great, you can slow down and, maybe have some different choices. Yeah.
Right. That's
Yeah.
fabulous. Thank you.
So, so earlier in the session, we asked everybody to have a sheet of paper and a pencil. So now would be the time for everybody to grab their sheet of paper. And some of the people that listened before have a heads up on this. So, um, so they probably went home and did homework.
Right.
So what I want everybody to do is to take just a little few seconds and write down every single word that they can think of that would be associated with the word anger, or just different shades and variations of anger, like pissed off, ticked, irritated, and just see how many they can come up with.
So all those words that you think about when somebody is starting to irritate you to the point where you just like flip your lid. All of those different words.
Right.
See what you can come up with. So we'll give them a little time for that. And while we're doing that, if you've just signed in, just make sure that you just turn your video off, because we're trying to keep the feed as clean as we can for everyone. And then at the end, we're going to have time for questions, and then we can probably ask those questions with the video feed and the mic on. So, but for the moment, if you just turn your video off and your mic off, and then if you do have comments, which we will be collecting those comments as we go through here, just go ahead and type them in the chat. So if you don't know where the chat is, there's a little balloon that appears at the bottom of the screen. You just hit that and your little chat window is going to show up on the side. And you can, if you have comments or questions as we go through, I might say save them till the end. Or if they're really pertinent to that moment, I will let Dr. Vicki know. So. While we're doing this, Andrew said that he had the experience of flipping his lid with his 14-year-old nephew. Oh, no. Oh, he was trying to get something done with Medi-Cal, and it was very frustrating. So I'm
Yep.
hoping that didn't affect anyone in a negative way. Hope you got through that situation. So hopefully what we're going to do here is going to help you with that next call.
Yeah. Well, we've all had situations like that where we just, oh, I could have done it differently. Yeah. But that's where we learn. We're all human. So I'd be curious to find out now. I think everybody's had a couple of seconds there. How many words did people come up with?
So go ahead and type in the chat if you Andrew came up with 7. Michelle had 11. Wow. Emily had 10. Jessie had 12. Betsy had 8. Abby had 14. Hopefully people aren't experiencing all these
Great.
words on a daily basis.
Well, that's great. Everybody's doing a great job on that. So what's fun is here, I actually have a sheet of 60. And that's probably not all of them. But it's interesting. But if everybody has their sheet of for their words, you can take a look at them, and like as I look at this sheet, I can, you can kind of get a feeling for, like, if you're going to rate them from 1 to 10. Okay. Like for me, let's see, irritated, annoyed, aggravated, frustrated, like crabby, like crabby, like might be a level 1, if I wake up in the morning and I'm crabby or cranky but if you get all the way up to rage, that might be a 10, so everybody can take a look at their sheet, and they'll be able to kind of feel the intensity that come with the words that they've written down. So what we want to do then, and everybody can kind of just a fun little exercise people can do on their own, is I found this on a website. It's from Therapist Aid. And so you can draw a little thermometer. And so when we talk about moving up the thermometer down here at level 1, we're cool, calm, collected, happy, things are good, and we're chilled. Okay. But say I wake up in the morning and my coffee maker breaks, or I'm out of coffee, then I crabby, maybe irritated, frustrated, and then I get a phone call and, maybe something's busted, and then I start moving up. And, there's just things that happen in our day that move us up and down. But let's say I hit a major event and something, I don't know, whatever happens, and I get angry. If I go all the way up to here, by the time I get up to 10, when I get to 10, that's where I flip my lid. So what everybody can do is on their thermometer, start to write down, for you, because irritated might be a number 5 for somebody else and a number 3 for me. Rage could be like an 8 for somebody and a 10 for somebody else. So everyone has their own thing on the thermometer. And so what this does, and the learning part here that ties to emotional intelligence, is that you can learn to recognize where you are on the thermometer and start to make changes in your actions and behaviors based on what your emotions are telling you for where you are on the thermometer. So, it also applies to other aspects of your life as well. For me, when I'm working with my horses, if I start to get irritated or frustrated, and I know things aren't starting to go very well with what I thought I had in mind, and my plans and the horse plans are completely different. As I'm getting through the irritated, frustrated, at some point I need to have a plan B in mind, or be willing to scratch my plans and have a plan B, because that irritation, that frustration is only going to tick off my horse, and it's going to be harmful to the relationship. And the most important thing to me is my relationship with that horse. And so I need to be aware of myself and where I am working with my horse to make sure that the relationship is maintained, as well as other people too.
That's how horses can help us, right? And
Exactly.
so this is this little exercise with the thermometer. That's really a tool for everyone to just start recognizing, oh, I'm on the way to getting really angry here. And at this moment, I need to interrupt my behavior. And if I, like you said, before I even begin, have a plan B, so that if I start to feel that, I can stop myself and go to that plan B instead of just riding the wave all the way up to the top of the thermometer. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
I am having if you could just couple seconds, I don't want to take too much time, but I had a great request for knowing just a few more of those 60 words.
The words?
Yeah.
Affronted,
Mm.
aggravated, agitated, annoyed, belligerent, boiling, burned up, crabby, cranky, cross, displeased, enraged, frustrated, furious, grouchy, grumpy, hot, impatient, indignant, infuriated. See, it's crazy. We know these words, but we don't think about them. Offended, outraged, peeved, resentful.
Well, that is really amazing. I just don't, I try not to feel most of those things, so I guess I haven't thought of all of that. But eh, yeah, and there's no vulgarity on the list. No.
No, there's
So
not.
there's a whole other category there. But
Right.
would it be possible, I'm wondering, Vicki, to have access to that list so people could look at it after the call?
Sure.
Would that be okay? All right, cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for that.
Yep. So, so I know this has been just a quick, run through and just it's just one teeny aspect of emotional intelligence and just a brief way to show us how we can start to improve and I think for me, the biggest thing that I look at is awareness. I think the biggest thing is if we're aware of something, we can work on it.
Hmm.
If we're not aware of it, then it's a challenge at that point. So what this does is it makes us aware of our feelings as we're moving up the thermometer. Um, so what we've done is we've learned a little bit about the brain. Then we did a little exercise, so how we can start to work with our feelings and to develop then some of our awareness to um, how it can impact our thoughts and our actions and our behaviors.
Hmm. Oh, this is really useful. Vicki, would you mind? Could you just say, let's say somebody came to you and they were saying, I'm getting up the list on this anger. What should be my plan B? Can you just give us an example of what could be a plan B for somebody?
Sure. I mean, lots of things that people can learn. There's, when to go walk around the house, when to take a break and come back in 5 minutes, to do some deep breathing. If you're in an argument with someone, you can say, you know what, I'm getting a little worked up here. I need to take a break. So
Hmm.
having, as you start to go up the thermometer, having different plans and, things in advance, to
Right.
think about, meditation is good. I mean, there's so many different things that people can do to work with start to work with themselves to do different things. It's just to develop some plan Bs.
Well, thank you. That was really useful. I didn't want to drag that on too much, but I know, like, okay, now what could be a plan B? So that makes total sense. And especially depending on that person and what works for them. Like you said, meditation, deep breathing. Other people might need to go for a run or go practice Taekwondo or something that makes sense for them to get that emotion out in a useful way and then come back.
Right.
So I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant. So it looks like people are getting kind of excited about this. I've had a question from Michelle, and how you assist in helping people. I can keep my emotions under control with horses, but some people are another story. And so I think you're going to get to that tonight, aren't you?
Well, I think what yeah, there's lots of different ways that people can get a hold of me. I have a couple of things getting on. Working it's kind of the same thing. Hi Michelle, by the way. Um, let's see, it's kind of the same thing as when we work with our horses because nobody just comes out and just all of a sudden works with the horses. I mean, they come out and we look at our horses and kind of go, ooh, what are you doing? And then I might have a reaction. And so it's like the same thing when we work with people, we start moving up that same awareness. And if there's certain people that irritate us and aggravate us, well, where are we on the scale? Okay, well, if that person drives me to an 8, what's my plan?
Hmm.
If somebody else drives me to a 3 and it's chronic, if it's just constantly a 3 every time I deal with this person, then I just need to develop a plan.
Hmm.
So it kind of fits the same theory. Um, but that's part of that why it's such a big subject because we have so many emotions and so many different ways we can learn to do things and it takes practice and it's like if at first we don't succeed we try again So I have a couple of different things people can do. So on my website, I have a free emotional health and well-being quiz that people can take if they're interested, and that's drvickyjohanneck.com. And then the big one that Farrah helped me with here. So I am going to be launching a subscription-based coaching community through the IHA Academy, and that will be on Tuesday evenings. So I plan to do like an educational topic every week, or we'll do a question and answer session. I'd love to find out what people are interested in, and I'll gear it towards what people's questions are. And the cost of that will be $35 a month. But what I will do is, for everyone listening tonight, I will give them the first month free, since it will be a brand new thing. But all I need from everybody is their email address. And then, of course, I do individual, group, and corporate coaching, as well as workshops and speaking engagements. And, anytime I'm into coaching with anyone, their first initial session is always free, because we want to find out if it's good fit, if coaching is going to be helpful, and what the plan would be, what their goals are, different things like that. So people can contact me directly for anything like that, or pricing for special events. So there's lots of different ways we can work on things.
Well, I just put it in the chat. If you are interested in taking that emotional intelligence quiz, it's pretty cool. It's on Dr. Vicki's website, drvickyjohanneck.com. And again, if you're interested, it's a pretty neat thing that Dr. Vicki is offering tonight with the 1 month free coaching community. And so definitely check that out. You can send an email to Dr. Vicki, or you can send an email to internationalhorsemanship.org, and we will make sure that you get on that list. I'm sorry, info. Thank you. Lisa corrected me. Info. I was like, there's no @ symbol. info@internationalhorsemanship.org. So thank you so much. So Vicki, we have about 5 to 10 minutes here to answer a few questions. Would you be willing to answer some people's questions tonight?
If I can.
You can just, make something up if you don't know.
Sure, I can do that.
So if anyone here, as you were watching this little seminar that Vicki was doing tonight, if you had a question or a thought about emotional intelligence, it would be a great time to just go ahead and type that in the chat. Again, that chat is located at the bottom of the screen. You just push the button, then you can go to the bottom of that window, type in your question there, and I would love to relay that to Dr. Vicki. And while we're waiting for other questions, I have a question for you, if you don't mind my asking a question. So what if you encounter somebody who has an anger problem and they don't think they do?
That's always an interesting question. Yeah. A lot of it goes back to, like I said, awareness. And, there could be each situation, and every person is so different. And this is sometimes where, drawing out the empathy, you're trying to understand where the other person could be coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody is aware that they have anger issues. If someone grows up sometimes in a real angry family, that's normal for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big thing is, then we can't ever, work on anybody else. We can only work on ourselves. And if we want to grow and learn, we do that on our own, and we create our own awareness. Sometimes maybe we have to have increased empathy and increased awareness to, let the other person be who they are. At some point, if it's appropriate, we can always suggest, maybe, you use some good communication. You could use I statements. this is another thing we should cover in our coaching community is I statements. There's a formula and a theory for how to be assertive and not aggressive. You can say, I feel, I feel upset when you always react this way. And I'd like you to think about, what you're saying and what you're doing. That's it's I statements for assertiveness. So I mean there's lots of different things we can think about, and the only one we can really change is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I think your comment there was fabulous, though, when you said to redirect it. This is how I feel when you say this. I feel like this versus you're being a horrible person, and directing that at that person. So that's really useful.
They're just going to get defensive, and then boom, one of the two of you is going to go up that thermometer.
Right.
So
and just ride the wave together.
Right. And it's just another plan B that you can have in mind. And it's hard to do. It's hard to remember to say I instead of you, and then you go, oh, that's a you statement. So
well, I think and go ahead, and if you do have some questions or comments about this evening, Ada joined a little later, but she says, thank you so much for this, Vicki. She really appreciates knowing more about emotional intelligence, and I know she uses it every day in her teaching. And then, so if you do have a comment or a question, feel free to type in the chat. If you can't figure out how to get to the chat, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just kind of say your name. Like if it was Jesse has a question or something like that, if you can't figure that out. So that's fine with me. And so while we wait for another question, Abby says that she's really happy that you guys redid this because she was apparently at the first one. She said it was very helpful and insightful. Abby, thank you for coming to this one. I thought this was very valuable information, and I'm really glad you were able to come again. Technology is what it is. It's an amazing thing. Oh my gosh. It's an amazing thing to connect all these people from the world all together, but it doesn't always work perfectly. So thanks for coming again. Okay, so Andrew would like to ask a question. Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Farrah?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, so we practiced something at Pagosa Springs where we had a carrot stick in our hands, and we had to go whack a barrel as hard as we could with that stick. Obviously, these were extra sticks. And then we had to go over to a friend and we had to hug them. And I noticed that I was vibrating like crazy the first couple of times, and I wonder if the doctor could talk about what kind of emotions or what kind of things I could have done to go faster at recovery.
Oh, that's a very interesting question, Andrew. I myself did that exact same exercise. Do you know what she's talking about, Vicki?
I do not know that exact exercise. Mm-hmm. I would probably, I don't know. That one would probably, truthfully, not be in my repertoire.
It was pretty neat because it was meant to, when people would go to a phase 4, right? We don't want to go there with emotion with the horse. It's just, you're still standing there and the fan is coming, right? But some people have never gone to that level. And so when they first, it's easy, right? And so going to that level and just practicing on a barrel and evokes all these emotions inside to just like raise your energy up that much. They had to bring their emotion up, and that's what Andrew is talking about.
Okay. Now that makes sense. I'm like, oh my gosh, whacking a barrel.
Why are we whacking barrels? Yeah. And actually, you know what I do, Vicki, when I do this, Andrew, I have students do this. I actually have the horses watch because they're like, oh, my human actually knows phase 4. And you never have to do it to the horse because they saw you do it.
Right.
So Andrew's question is, how could he recover faster from that experience?
Well, I think I don't know if there is a recover faster. It's, people, you feel what you feel, Andrew. I mean, it's like when if you're whacking that barrel and it brings up like huge intensity, then it just might just bring up that level of intensity, and it's good for you to feel it, and then just kind of work through it and work through it and work through it. So sometimes working through it faster isn't necessarily better.
Mm.
So I think working through it, and they used to laugh at me at in some of the places that I work with some of the therapy I used to do, because I'd always tell people, they'd tease me because they go, "Oh, just walk into the pain, just walk into the pain and feel it," you know, because I like people to feel what they're feeling. And
Mhm.
so you have to feel what you have to feel in order to get through it to the other side. You
Mhm.
so I don't think working through it faster would have necessarily been any better. It was just the journey for you, Andrew, that worked for you. And it sounds like that you had a good outcome with it. And it was the experience that you needed in order to be able to process that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting comment though that you had, Vicky, that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that it took more time, and that's really cool that you did the exercise because you could practice feeling that emotion and then coming down off of the feeling and breathing
Right.
and then going through it again. And each time he said each time he did it, he did feel less emotional about it. So even what you said earlier about the plan B of deep breathing or jogging around or um, you know, going through that to help when you start to feel those emotions would probably be a perfect situation for that too. Would you
Right.
agree?
Right.
Oh, that's fabulous. Oh, all right. So Lisa has a comment, and go ahead if you guys do have a question. We might have time for one more question. Lisa says it reminds me of galloping horses, especially if they aren't used to it. And sometimes they don't regulate emotion well or quickly in the beginning and come back to normal.
Right.
That is a brilliant comment, Lisa. And absolutely. I mean, I love playing with all those horses at Liberty because finally, in the end, one sits in the middle and says, I don't know what you guys are all worried about. But they don't start out like that. They get caught up in each other's emotions. And so I think it's very, very pertinent, Lisa. Thanks for that comment. Wow, there's all kinds of comments coming in about the barrel. So good topic there, Andrew. Ada said their flight line might be longer. Yeah, talking about people's flight lines.
Right.
There's no way to fast forward that in horses. We just have to keep practicing and going through that emotion, getting shorter. And I often talk about this with my students. Those really high level activities that you want your horse to do, like if it requires a lot of engagement or impulsion, like a piaffe or lead changes or really hard fast spin or a stop. In the beginning, the horses will get emotional from that, and we have to be there. We have to help them through it because it's the only time they would do it in nature, is if they were emotional.
Right.
And then the more they do it, they start to separate the activity from the emotion. So I guess we are a little bit more like
See,
horses
and
than we thought.
that's so amazing, because the horses and the humans, there's such crazy parallel things, because it's just like, it's like, it's the adrenaline that gets people to lift cars and things like that. And it's just like some of the horses running around crazy are on their adrenaline. And, you know, to be able to feel it and not react to it and things like that. So yeah, it's just interesting. I love the horse human parallels.
It's really fascinating. I'm just going to read a couple more comments, and we need to wrap up. But Betsy says, I think the barrel whacking exercise is a great simulation. For just that reason you're describing, it's good to understand how you are going to feel so you know what would happen if you use that level of intensity with your horse. Gives you a chance to know how you're going to come up with that plan B when you need to use a phase 4, but don't want to get amped up when you go there. Excellent
And you
explanation.
know what? I will add one thing on there. So
Mhm.
let's take that and apply that to people. You know, if you feel that you're getting that ramped up with somebody that's a person, or something, or a situation or something like that, that's when we need to realize that we don't want to go to a level 4, and we want to keep our emotions like down, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, I think thank you for that. We have, let's see, everyone's commenting at the end. We're going to take a couple more comments, and then you're just going to have to go to Dr. Vicki's free coaching sessions in her coaching community. So Lisa says, what would be your number one tip for improving your emotional intelligence overall? Question mark, awareness, question mark, practice of something particular. Can you just and I'm sorry for cutting everyone's questions off, but please keep them and please ask them in the coaching community. I think it's going to be really, really cool. I don't know about you, but just talking with Vicki tonight, I hope you get to see what a really compassionate person that she is, that she really does want to help horses and people. But so the number one tip you would leave us with for improving our emotional intelligence overall, would it be awareness or
one,
practice of something?
one specific thing. And anybody that's in my coaching sessions or works with me coaching, I love homework. I always assign homework. We always talk about homework, because like the improvements are not made when we're talking. The improvements are made like during the week, in between the times that we talk and check in and things like that. So the one thing people can do is have a little notebook and carry it with you. Put it in your purse or in your pocket or something like that. And at different times during the day, take out your notebook and start writing down, what am I feeling? Name that feeling,
Mm,
and then rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Um, just to start to identify your emotions, because this all falls under the category. The very first one is self-awareness.
mhm.
So you want to become self-aware. What are you feeling? And sometimes it's really fun when you get that emotion and you go, I feel something, but what is it? I
Mm.
have actually Googled emotions and tried to look up words, because, oh, that's not, just like that little anger list. Well, it's not really this, it's not really that, you know, but just start doing that. Just start writing down, what am I feeling? What level of intensity is it? Um, and then just do it. You could even do it every day at 12 o'clock or something like that. Or, or if it's really fun, is if you do lose your temper, you go, oh, I'm an 8, or oh man, I just flipped my lid,
Mhm.
and or joy. I'm a joy, and it's a 10, you
Mhm.
know, 9, or or even just mildly happy with the 1, just so we can start to know ourselves, and start practicing on that is a good start.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming here and doing this again with us. I really wanted everyone to be able to hear this, everything that you had to say, and really get to meet you as a person. I enjoy so much talking with you personally. So I think everyone got a little taste of that tonight. We have some great comments coming through. Great information. Thanks so much. Emily says, and Ada says, thank you again for doing this. And so, again, if you want to, please send an email to info@internationalhorsemanship.org and request joining that free month of Dr. Vicki's coaching community. You won't regret it. You can also go onto our website, take that emotional fitness quiz, and see how you come out at the end. It gives you some useful information. Andrew says, may the horse be with you, Vicki. Lisa says, thanks, Dr. Vicki. Great info, great information. Jesse says, thanks for the wonderful chat, everyone. Well done. So we're going to sign off tonight. Thank you again, Vicki, and we'll see you again soon, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.